I don't think there's anything that compares in gaming to reaching the end of a Souls-like game, knowing that you've persevered through all, tens to even hundreds of hours to reach this point where it all culminates, and to see that final screen where it's like the enemy's been defeated, God slain, nightmare slain, like all of these different endings, all of that, to reach the end of these games and to kind of look back over your journey. There's a certain level of, I think, confidence that comes with that. And it's something that, a lot of people talk about with these games when it comes to basically this, learning these life lessons through these games of, some things are hard. These games don't hold your hand. They don't tell you a lot. They kind of just plop you in this world and they say, go for it. Do what you need to do to reach this end and make it your own way. And I think having beaten multiple of these games, some of them multiple times, it really has kind of filled me with a certain level of confidence to take into other aspects of my life that I think that's an angle that doesn't always get talked about with these games. As in, this was something I approached out of my own will because I thought it was a cool game and I wanted to reach the end of it. And yeah, it was hard. Yeah, there was a struggle there to learn these games, learn their mechanics, learn how to learn the boss moves, memorize the move sets to finally reach the end of the game. And to be able to say to myself afterwards, hey, I did that. I reached this end, sometimes with help from other members in the community. And that's another, I think that's something else that can't be understated either in this, like, if you can get through these games 100% blind, you have my utmost respect. But I'm not that person. I'm not that guy. I'm pretty sure every single one of these games at some point I've looked up guides. With Elden Ring, I was doing it a lot. It was my first Souls game. Bloodborne, especially, if you're going for like platinum status for sure. But, looking up different items, looking up, understanding how people were doing different builds in these games. I don't think there's any shame in it. And again, that also kind of, I think, translates into other areas of life where it's like, hey, things I don't fully understand. There is no harm. There is no shame in asking people for help to help you achieve those goals, to help you reach whatever you're looking for, whether it's, a new hobby you're picking up, your career, the gym, learning different things. Like, there's no shame in asking for help. And I think there's a certain part of the Souls community that kind of like rolls their eyes and scoffs. Usually, kind of the more like hardcore fans that kind of look at the what you might call casual fans of, it's, kind of tied into gym culture and this whole like get good mindset. And while I do think there's a lot of like toxicity there when it comes to like what I would call the more sweaty players, where it's like, oh, look at me, I beat Elden Ring with a torch and I didn't level up once and I didn't wear any armor and I got to the end of the game. You're not as good as me. Yes. That is, and that's an extreme example, but that is a unfortunately toxic side of the community that does exist. What I think is a more positive way, and what I wish more of the Souls community would focus on and uplift the voices in, are the people who are saying, hey, all of these things that you've learned from these games, this perseverance mindset of like, you can't, unless you were just built completely different, you're not walking into these games like, I'm gonna, no hit every single boss in this game. I'm gonna, one or two try and get to the end, and it's not really gonna be much of a problem. Like, almost no one has that, unless again you were on a different plane from me. But I think there needs to be more pushing of the more positive side of it, of hey, you've learned these skills, apply them elsewhere in your life. And I think the Souls games have helped me compartmentalize a lot of that in my personal life, where it's like, hey, this is the mindset I was in to get through this boss or through this area of the game, to reach the end of Elden Ring, to reach the end of Bloodborne, to get through the DLC of that. to reach the end of Sekiro and the thrill of that final boss fight in that game. It is probably a top 5 moment for me in gaming. Genuinely. Really, the 3 endings of that game, of all 3 of those games, of facing off against Radagon, of seeing the moon presence, of fighting Ishin from Sekiro, those are moments that stick with me, continue to stick with me. And when I reach moments in my life where I'm like, okay, this is going to be a challenge. This is, you know, say I'm at the gym, which I do. I try to work out as frequently as I can, but it's like, you know, to push through those hard moments and come out on the other side and to see gradual but progressive results. Similar to like these games, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit, but then you start upgrading and you look back over time and you're like, okay, I'm 50 hours in. I am so much stronger at the end of this game than I was at the very beginning, where I was doing like next to no damage. And seeing that progression and putting your, and look, in real life, sometimes you have those stumbles. Sometimes, you know, similar to these games where you'll get to a boss and you're like, oh, I've been doing good, you know, the past couple hours. And then you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not this good. Maybe I'm getting humbled a little bit. And you keep pushing. You keep pushing forward. You keep going. You keep saying, hey, you know, this is a stumbling block in my life, but I'm not going to let it define me, and I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to push forward and carrying that mindset into other things. Like, you know, this week at the gym, I, you know, was struggling lifting. I was more tired than usual. I wasn't sleeping well. It's not the end of the world. I can then go in the next week and maybe I'm doing a little bit better, and I build back up again until I'm back on track. And I think that's the same with so many other aspects of our lives. I know I kind of am focusing on the gym aspect a little bit, because I think it's pretty applicable to a lot of people, and, you know, something kind of big in my life. But I mean, it's the same thing with your career, with your job, you know, figuring school. You know, you're going to have those off weeks. You're going to have those times where it's like, man, I feel swamped. I feel like I'm not making any headway in my life. And then you keep pushing forward, because you gotta push forward. You gotta push forward for yourself, and then you come out on the other end of it stronger. Just, you know, looking back at yourself saying, hey, you know, that was a rough spot, but now I'm on the other side and I'm so much better for it. And these games, I think they do such a good job of helping you, almost training your mind in a way to think in that direction, to almost be more positive, which is such a interesting thing to say, because these games that a lot of times, Dark Souls, dark is in the name of the game, but training you to, despite all of it, push forward to reach that end goal. And I think that's such a huge thing. I think that's why so many people have gravitated towards these games, you know, above the lore, above the art direction, above the music. It's this, you know, what are these games known for in so many circles? And, you know, you see this all the time. Every so many months, someone will say something online, or a tweet will blow up or whatever, where someone's like, you know, there's no reason for the Souls games to not have a difficulty selector, you know, easy, medium, hard, whatever. And I think if that's your approach to these games, and I don't mean this in a gatekeeping way, they're not for you. This is how these games are made. There's just never been one of them where that was a thing. And I think removing that would really just harm how people interact with these games, of helping each other reach the end of these games, of, hey, this is what I did to defeat this boss, to get through this area. And, you know, we're all approaching it at the same level. Like, it's all the same to everyone. Everyone gets the exact same game. There's nothing different about it other than how you approach it. And I think if you remove that element and start adding in difficulty settings, well, then it's like, well, if it's too hard, just make it easier, you know. And I do think that is such a core component of not only these games, but the community that surrounds these games, that if you were to remove that, I think it would hurt these games. Like, I don't think they would not necessarily have like any merit after that, because I think they are just genuinely well-made games with incredible art direction, with incredible music, that transcends that, but I think such a large part of what draws people into these games to begin with would be gone if that was, something that was there. And I just think that would be a terrible thing, and I don't think it'll happen. I genuinely don't think under Miyazaki's, direction that these games produced from FromSoft would go in that direction. But I think coming out of these games, having beaten most of them, and I think that's where a lot of confidence comes from in our lives, is pushing through those things that are hard, and you come out on the other end better, and you're able to say, I did that. I pushed through. And there's a certain level of confidence that I don't think you can get really from anything else other than having pushed through things that maybe were difficult, maybe were hard, and to come out on the other side even more confident because now you've done it. Now you've looked at the monster and you've seen what it truly looks like, and you weren't scared, and instead you pushed forward. And now you're able to say, look at me, look at where I came from and where I am now. And I think, applying that in so many areas of your life is huge. I really do think a lot of my confidence I've gained over the past year, and I know this is silly to say, is because of those mindset tricks, whatever you want to call them, things that I've learned from these games that I've then applied to my personal life, whether it is in social settings, in my work, in the gym, talking to people, talking to clients I work with, to walk in with a level of confidence of, hey, I've done this before. I don't need to be shy. I don't need to be timid. I don't need to be scared. I've done things like this before. I can do it again. Whether it was in a video game, whether it was in my work, whether it was at the gym, whatever it was, you put all of it together and say, hey, I've been here. Whether it's a different setting or not, I've still been in a situation where I had to push through. I can do it again, and I can keep doing it again. And I think that's such a huge thing that these games teach people, that I think that's why you see so many people saying, hey, these games really did help me when I was in a low part of my life. It oddly enough dragged me out of dark places, depression, whatever, because it helps you get into that mindset of, life sucks sometimes. It really does, but it can be better, and you can achieve those things that you want to eventually get to work towards those things. And I think that's such a huge thing from these games. I will always be grateful for them for helping me through my own things in the past to help. And like anything, if you're constantly going to these games and you're neglecting certain areas of your life, I'm not talking about that. I think you do need to kind of readjust your priorities. But for the people who are able to go into these games and take things out of them, that's such a huge thing, and why I will continue to recommend these games to people and say, hey, they left an impact on me. Maybe it will for you too. So I hope you guys like this video. This was kind of a little bit different one on my channel, but it was something I was thinking about this week, and I wanted to do something about it and just kind of yap and talk about how these games have kind of impacted me in that way, because I think it's something that can't really be understated. But look, if you like the video, give it a like, subscribe. I'm trying to post pretty frequently on here. I also do some stuff over on TikTok, so give that a follow as well. But thank you so much, guys, and I will see y'all next time.
Tarnished thy strength.